So this question here focuses on looking at parabolas in completed square form and looking at properties associated with them. So what the question is asking is, if there's a parabola there where it's given of the form y equals bracket x plus a close bracket squared plus b, it wants us to then look at some of the properties of it. Now, one thing we need to remember is that if a parabola is given in this format, its turning point is at negative a, comma b. So if that's the case, what that means is that we have to make sure we take that into account when we're looking at answers to the question. So if we start by looking at A is looking at the properties associated with this and being in that format. So for A, we can read it off. Now, the turning point is at 3, 2. So if I match that up with what I had just written there, I know that negative A is equal to 3. So for part 1, I can quite simply state that therefore A is equal to negative 3. And similarly, I can match it up for the B, so looking at part 2 of A, where I can say that B is equal to 2. So that there is the values of A and B, given that. Then part B wants me to say if the P is the point 0, C, I want to find the value of C. So what this is telling me is when x is 0 and y is C, what is the value of C? Now, the original equation, if you look at it, is still written in terms of y, x, a, and b. But given that we know the values for a and b, what we're able to do is rewrite this equation with these new values in, and then use the point in order to be able to figure out c. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to start by rewriting it. So I'm going to write the original equation, this time with the values of a and b in, as y equals x, this time I've got to go for that, minus 3 squared, because I've got my negative a is equal to 3, so a is negative 3, and then I've got the plus b, so plus 2. Now using the point 0, c, if I match that up to a generic coordinate x, y, what that means is I know the value for x is 0, what I'm going to substitute in for the y is c, and I can then write an equation that says c equals 0 minus 3 squared plus 2. And now, if I figure out the numbers on the right hand side, what I'll get is I'll get a value for c. So therefore, c is going to equal 0 minus 3 is negative 3, so negative 3 squared is 9, plus 2, so it's going to be a value of 11. So we know that P is the equivalent of the y-intercept, so the y-intercept for this one is going to be 11. That's where it's going to cut the y-axis, is essentially what that's told us. Now for this question, each of those parts is just a single mark. So A is negative 3, B is 2, each of those are a mark on their own, and C, getting 11, is a mark on its own as well. For the first one, for A, if you messed up the values of A or B, and you used them to complete part B and found the correct C value corresponding to that, you could still get that mark there at the end. So the error wouldn't affect you more than once. You would just have to make sure you did the working correct. Although, I wouldn't recommend putting the wrong values in. Now, completed square form parabola, very typical question here. It's not difficult. The key thing you need to remember is how the parabola of this form at the top matches up with the turning point. If you can remember that, you'll be able to read information, work with information off a graph given in that format, and then be able to use it effectively. And if you can do that, question like this, easy peasy lemon squeezy.